Imagine this. Every time you sneeze, just like clockwork, a random historical figure from the past materializes right in front of you. You'd be sitting there, maybe at your desk, your nose tickling just a little, and then, a puff of air and suddenly, boom, there's Cleopatra, regal and slightly annoyed, standing in your living room. You didn't even have to ask for her. She's just there. And now, the most important question of your day is, what do you do with Cleopatra, who's just casually draped in a toga, holding a scepter, looking around like she's waiting for an explanation? What do you even say to Cleopatra in the middle of a Monday morning? It starts innocently enough, right? You're on the subway, trying to get to work. You feel the tickle in your nose. You think, no big deal, it's just a sneeze, and then, out of thin air, there's Julius Caesar, resplendent in his laurel wreath, looking confused and mildly disappointed by the lack of grandeur in your surroundings. "Where is my Senate? Where are my legions?" he demands. You stare at him, holding your coffee cup, wondering how you're supposed to politely explain that this is a very different kind of empire. You'd probably just awkwardly apologize, but you'd also know that this isn't just a fluke. No, this is now your life. Every sneeze means a new guest from the pages of history. Okay, so what happens next? You'd be living your life in constant fear of the next sneeze. Becomes less of a moment of release and more like an impending doom, because you never know who's about to show up. Maybe it's Aristotle, sitting cross-legged on your floor, contemplating the meaning of life while you're trying to figure out what to order for lunch. Or maybe it's Leonardo da Vinci, shaking his head as he critiques the design of your couch, muttering something about the proportions being off. You'd have to keep a stash of history books next to your bed just so you can quickly Google who's about to walk through your front door, and more importantly, why. Let's talk about the logistics of this. Say you sneeze in a crowded room, and suddenly Genghis Khan appears right in the middle of a family gathering. How do you explain to your aunt that you didn't invite him? And what does Genghis think of pizza? Does he know it's not a battle strategy but a food item? Do you offer him a slice of pepperoni, wondering how he'd respond to modern food? Would he approve, or would he conquer your kitchen and declare it part of his empire, demanding feasts of finer food? Probably both, right? At first, you'd be terrified, but then Genghis Khan, of all people, might just sit down and ask you what your favorite movie is. That's what's wild about this scenario. You'd be learning about history and becoming its accidental tour guide. Not to mention, your house would turn into a living history museum, and you'd probably need a bouncer to manage the foot traffic of historical figures. But the real complications begin when you start getting visitors who don't play nice with the modern world. What if you sneeze in a quiet park and Napoleon Bonaparte materializes, all tiny and dramatic, immediately demanding to be taken to the front lines of a battle? Or what if it's a Victorian-era nobleman, clutching his top hat and talking about the unspeakable horrors of the modern age, like electric light or, God forbid, veganism? You'd be forced to explain things. How Wi-Fi works, why we use apps to call cabs, why people can travel from country to country in mere hours, while they stand there, hands on their chins, judging the state of modern civilization. And what about the friendships you could make? You could have a legit conversation with Albert Einstein about the fabric of the universe while you're waiting for your coffee. You might sneak in a chat with Marie Curie about her experiences as a pioneering woman in science, asking her how she managed to navigate all the barriers she faced. But then, halfway through that conversation, you'd sneeze again, and bam, Shakespeare's right there, delivering soliloquies about your personal life, making everything sound more dramatic than it actually is. To sneeze or not to sneeze, that is the question. He might muse, and you just nod, unsure whether you should applaud or, call a doctor, because now you've got two historical figures competing for your attention. At some point, you'd start building your own oddball social network of historical figures, all of them sharing different perspectives, offering strange advice. Abraham Lincoln might tell you about unity, while Cleopatra would be giving you life lessons on leadership with a side of luxury. You'd probably end up hosting dinner parties that blend time periods in the most bizarre ways. Just imagine you, casually sitting at a dinner table with Cleopatra and Lincoln, trying to bridge the gap between the ancient world and the Civil War era, and at some point, Lincoln's probably asking why no one seems to care that you're suddenly best friends with a queen. It's not normal. But then again, nothing about this would be normal. The real question, though, is how much would history change if these historical figures were suddenly appearing in our world? With the wisdom of someone like George Washington sitting in a Starbucks and hearing him critique today's politics? Could he do a better job? What if you told Cleopatra about social media? Could you convince her that TikTok is the modern equivalent of the Nile, the source of life in our social universe? The ripple effects of these encounters could lead to historical events happening at a faster pace, with the minds of the past offering wisdom or madness to the present. You might end up convincing Einstein to help you solve the climate crisis, or convince Marie Curie to find a cure for a modern disease. But no matter how wild it gets, the sneeze factor would never lose its chaotic charm. The world would slowly turn into a place where the boundaries of time become porous, and history doesn't just remain in textbooks. It'd be living, breathing, and yes, sometimes a little frustrating, but undoubtedly fascinating. So, the next time you feel that sneeze coming on, take a moment to think, who's about to show up? Will it be your favorite philosopher, or a tyrant with a very loud opinion? Either way, history's knocking at your door, one sneeze at a time. So, who would you want to show up? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button so you can keep getting weirdly awesome what-ifs like this one.